What's up, gals? Thanks again for being here with us. We have Trina Glines today. She's a relationship trainer, coach, and speaker, and founder of the Taming Jane Academy. She's going to be talking to us about strengthening our marriage. So tell me this, Trina, what inspired you to become a relationship coach?
Actually, it was me going through my own journey. So I've always been a teacher since I very first got married. We've been married 30 years. And I taught in a different platform. I taught a lot of youth and traveled and did, different seminars and stuff for youth, and kind of got bored of that. But I was also at the same time going through my own transitions in my own life. And I just one day was like, I need to strengthen my marriage. I need to work on that. So as I went through my own journey, it made such a huge difference that I'm like, I got to share this with other women. So then I just started sharing it with friends and started out doing just almost like a book club deal kind of thing with ladies. And it resonated so well that's where it all began.
That's amazing. You're like, I got to share this with the world. Apparently It works. So tell me a little bit about your family, how long you've been married and how many kids you have.
So I've been married 30 years. We've got 5 kids. The oldest is my daughter, and then we have 4 sons. And we only have, our baby is almost 21. He's the only one not married. Everybody else is married. I've got 3 grandchildren, 2 grandsons, and a granddaughter. And so, yeah, we're empty nesters. Just got a puppy at Christmas. And
you're in the easy stage.
Yeah, for sure.
somewhat. So do your own kids use your course that you came up with?
They actually do. So my daughter took my class, and both of my daughter-in-laws took my class. My new daughter-in-law that just got married, my son just got married in August. She hasn't taken my class yet, but she's asked me lots of questions. So, and they've read some books together that I recommended. And so that was, it's all, I don't want to push it ever, especially on daughter-in-laws. I want it to be really natural, but my one daughter-in-law's taken it a couple times, and my daughter's taken it a couple of times. And it's been, in some ways I'm like, if that's all it was for my own kids, then I'm happy, right? Like, just knowing you can help out your kids with things that you wish you would have known.
Right. No, I love that. I love that so much. So you talk about the difference between men's language and women's language. So let's dive into that a little bit. What is men's language?
All right. Good question. And unfortunately, it can't be answered in a one sentence, answer. And I often relate it to, it's like learning a foreign language. How long would it take you to learn a foreign language? But it's not only learning the foreign language, but if you went to live in the country, how differently they do different things. Like, they sneeze differently. I didn't ever know that till I traveled. They call animals, they call dogs and cats differently. They have different traditions. They work different than we do. And that's kind of the language of men, because there's also a language of women, but we just know it, so we don't think we need to understand it. And so when you understand how you work as a woman, it's like mind-blowing. You're like, oh my gosh, now all these mysterious reasons why you did things make sense. And it's the same thing with men, because often what we do as humans is we assume others are just a version of us. Mm-hmm. We just assume that. We assume our husbands, he's just a different version of me. And we often hear, you have like men are from Mars, women from Venus type books, and we hear how we speak 2 different languages, our minds work differently. But what I have kind of taken it to the next level is I teach women how that applies to day-to-day life. Where and how does that show up? And I think it's really important that we recognize those differences and allow them to be, because we actually complement each other. And so learning his language, it's seriously different from, everything from sex to sleep to finances to communication to how they do their to-do list, everything is different. And when we recognize that, it's so many ahas, like, oh my word, how did I not know that? So I'd be happy to share a couple like
Please.
examples of this, if that would be good. So one of them is, and you hear this in different terms, that men are single task focused and women are multitask alerted. Men, the way I explain single task focus is men think about one thing at one time. And we don't understand that as women because we're thinking about everything all at once. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is a root of why we often as wives might feel like our husbands are misbehaving, because they really only think about one thing at a time. When their train is on that track, that's all they're thinking about. When they're at work, they're like work, 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 work. And we don't understand why, like, they're at home and they're doing something and a whole bomb just blew up in the family room. They're like oblivious to the bomb because he's in on his computer doing something, and we're getting frustrated because they don't attack it like we do. Mm-hmm. But they work different. They're single task focused for a reason. That single task focus allows them to be the protector, the provider, the procreator. You know, they have to go out and provide, slay dragons all day long, and they need to be able to concentrate and not have all of these distractions. Whereas how often now you're married, I'm assuming.
Uh-huh, yes.
You know, your husband said, can you just think about one thing at a time? You know, because we're like,
no, I can't.
It's not our to-do list and it's everything all at once, right? Like we see it all, but we have to, because we're women and we're mothers and we're taking care of all these children. And if we only did one thing at a time, dinner's going to burn, the baby's going to cry, and we're not going to hear them while we're doing something else. You know, like we have to understand all of that. So the way that this can show up in a marriage, just some kind of a couple fun examples. Years ago, before I learned any of this, my husband and I were going on a date or something. I can still remember where we were driving here in the town that we live. And I'm in the car, he's driving, getting us to some place. I think we had reservations somewhere, something. And I'm just chatting away. And I watch him lean up and turn the radio off. And I'm like, I stop talking and I look at him and I look at the radio and I look at him. And I'm like, you just tried to turn me off. The radio was not on. That was me talking. And he's like, what? You know, like deer caught in the headlights. He didn't even realize what he was doing. All he knew was he was trying to concentrate on getting us to where we needed to get. There was some traffic. And I'm talking, and it was disrupting that concentration. So he tried to turn me off. Now I understand it. I laugh so hard about it, but believe me, that affected the entire night.
Oh, I'm sure.
My husband tried to turn me off, and I'm like, this doesn't go over well with me, you know? And now I realize, like, note to self, ladies, when you are driving someplace, if it's somewhere around town, you're getting somewhere quick, not a good time to have a conversation with your man, because he's really concentrating on where he needs to go. One thing I often ask ladies is, does your husband often like miss turns? Like you're driving and you're like, hun, that was the turn, right? You know, and it's usually because he's concentrating on something else, or you're talking, and he can't do both. We might be able to do that, but he doesn't work that way, and it's okay. But how often we take offense to that? How often we get frustrated with that? So that's kind of an example of it showing up. Real quick, another example would be if you have a sock husband that just takes the socks off before he goes to bed at night, and you've asked him how many times to put those darn socks in the hamper. You've even taken the lid off the hamper so he can just play basketball. And he doesn't. Well, I just want to explain to women what goes through their mind, because so often we attach ourselves to those socks. And we feel like those socks, we walk into the bedroom, he's left to work, and we look at the socks, and the socks are talking to us, and they're saying, I don't love you. I didn't have time to pick them up today. You're not important enough. And we're so frustrated inside, when really this is what happened. He It's like time to go to bed. He goes in, he gets in bed. Oh, I've got my socks on. I don't need my socks on. Like he didn't even realize he had them on. Takes them off, throws them down. I'll put them away in the morning. Good intentions, very, very good intentions. Goes to sleep, alarm goes off. Oh, I have an 8 o'clock meeting. Steps over the socks, jumps in the shower. I got to get to my meeting. Got to get to my meeting. Washing my hair, walks over the socks to leave because he needs to get to his meeting. He never saw the socks. But we think he doesn't care because we've asked him how many times. Now, I'm not saying, ladies, that your husbands shouldn't pick up their socks. It's not what I'm saying. But it's a great example of how their single task focus doesn't make them be aware of everything that we're aware of. And we compare them as a version of us because, ladies, we would never leave the socks there. Somebody asked us to do something. You know, Lauren, would you ever leave the socks there?
I would not.
You would not. Why?
Because I took so long cleaning the house and I want my house organized.
You really care about it, right? You
Yes.
really care about it. So you think because he leaves the socks there, he doesn't care. And that's how, and it just gets them in trouble and it makes us have hurt feelings and frustrations that just when you understand it, just changes everything. So those are two great examples of single task focus and how those can create problems for us.
Yes.
What do you think of those?
Well, the sock thing is exactly what happens on my house on a daily basis, except in our living room. They are just all over our living room, and I'm the one that always has to pick them. So that rings true. So I guess my next question for you is, do you recommend just kind of letting it go, or is there a different way that you can approach your husband about it? What do you suggest?
Well, there obviously always is learning their language, right? And it's learning how to communicate with them that resonates with them. And when we are correcting it over and over again, that comes across as criticism. And criticism for men, it doesn't work. We can criticize women and we will change them. They might not like it, but it will change them. Criticism works on women. Men will even criticize women and it will change us. But criticism only ticks men off. So what you have to do is you have to learn his language, what resonates with him. Admiration and appreciation is what feeds men. That will change men and the way it, and I shouldn't say change men because we don't necessarily change them, but it will influence them to want to be better. Way quicker, way faster. And criticism just flat out, it doesn't work. It's the number one complaint of men about their wives. They criticize me. And we don't look at it as criticism because it's what we would do.
Right.
And so if say, you end up having a little needs conversation, which I teach the ladies, how to have these needs conversations because you as a woman need to get your needs met. But we as women, part of our language is we are givers and adapters. And we will give and adapt everything away, which we need to do because we're moms, but we do it to the point of exhaustion. And so I would teach you how to do that needs conversation with him. Like, hon, when you leave your socks, this is how it makes me feel. Because he's a provider. He wants to provide for you. But when you pick them up, oh my gosh, it just makes me feel like you care that I cleaned the house today. And, you let him know what it provides you. Then the next time he picks his socks up, like you see him, you're like, "Hon, you're my hero!" And you give him that appreciation for that. That just fed him. Remember, men love competition. They love to win. Why do you think we have sports? Who do you think invented sports? And there's a winner and a loser, and they're always cheering, like, I want my team to win. Well, men want to win, and it's not worth it to them if they're always losing. They will stop playing the game. They will stop. A good example of criticism stopping men, and can I preface here, this works for your children. This works for anyone. This is not just a husband and wife's thing. This is men and women's language, okay? So is for some reason, I think as women, we were born with the queen hat on over the dishwasher. There's only one right way to load the dishwasher.
Mhm.
And many, many years ago, I was visiting my mother and father-in-law, and I always wondered why my father-in-law never loaded the dishwasher, never loaded the dishwasher. He would rinse and set them in the sink. And he's a helper. So I was like, why does he never load the dishwasher? And I quickly learned that it was because he'd been corrected so many times. And it's so funny because as women, it's not a big deal. Think about it. You're at your mom's house, your sister's house, some woman's house, and you are loading her dishwasher. And what goes through your mind? I hope this is where these go in her dishwasher, because you know she has her way of loading the dishwasher. Well, when I was at my mother and father-in-law's house, my sister-in-law went over and was loading the dishwasher, and I watched my mother-in-law come over and correct it. Oh no, these go here and these go here. And I went, oh, this is so why he stopped loading the dishwasher. So if your man doesn't load the dishwasher, think about it. Think about why. And what I did is what I embraced was, because I have 4 sons. I have 4 sons. One, it's good in the beginning to teach them. You teach them the proper way to load the dishwasher. So, bowls and things don't flip over. But it's okay if some things are on the top and bottom and vice versa. There's different ways for things to get clean. And I was able to release the pressure of being in charge of it all. And so what, if I went and pulled the dishwasher out and my youngest had loaded the dishwasher and there was a few bowls that did get flipped over and a couple things that didn't get clean, I just grabbed them and re-put them back in and put the rest away. And then I thanked my son for loading the dishwasher because he did it, and it's okay if it wasn't perfect. And right, this is all about, we are all perfectly imperfect.
Right.
But you will shut down their giving, especially as men and boys, by always correcting, teaching the right way, which comes across to them as criticism. Your daughters, you can do that a little more, but remember, as you do that more and more, you're teaching them there's only one right way to do something, and they're going to pass that on. They're going to pass that on. So.
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure right there. So since you expanded this a little bit to your kids as well, if you need to have kind of a critical conversation with your husband or with your sons, when is the best moment to do it, since they are so single task oriented? What advice do you have when you're like, okay, I really need them to focus on me? When's that best moment to do that?
Such a great question. Thank you for asking that question, because this is what we get ourselves in trouble with all the time. You asking for a time to talk. You ask him for a time to talk. So say he's in his office and he's working. First of all, you've got to learn how to interrupt single task focus nicely. Okay, because how often has this happened to you? You just walk in wherever your man is and you just start chatting away. And after about, 15, 20 seconds, he turns and looks at you and goes, what were you saying? And you're like, oh my God.
Too many times has that happened to me.
Why did you not stop me before I started spending the 30 seconds talking? But he honestly didn't hear you. He didn't hear you. He was singly focused on whatever he was doing. If it was watching the football game, I don't care if it was eating a sandwich. He was paying attention to the pickle in his mouth, whatever it was. They are singly focused. It's a real thing. So if you walked in, your husband's eating, and you walk up, and one of the greatest ways to interrupt single task focus is actually touch. Like if you went up and touched his arm, and then he just waited and he just looked at you like, oh, hey, hon. And he's like, oh, I've got his attention right there. I can talk to him. He's now focused on me. Or you can just walk in and say, hey, hon, and you wait. Do not start talking until they acknowledge that you're there. And then be respectful. Just like we like to say, how many times have your kids, mom, hey, mom, and you're in the middle of something and you're like, oh, just give me a minute, right?
Yes.
They're always in the middle of something. Always. So once, if he's in his office, he's working or whatever, you say, hey, hon, I have something I need to share with you. When would be a good time we could chat? And he can look at it and go, hey, can you give me 15 minutes? Yeah, that'd be great. There you go.
Easy as that.
Yeah. It's just interrupting that single task focus, having respect that their minds don't work like ours. We can actually fold the laundry, have a conversation, and be thinking about what we're going to make for dinner. That blows their minds. Like, I don't know, a lot of husbands, if you're folding laundry while you're having a conversation with them, they think you're not listening. And they'll like kind of sit back like, is she really hearing me? Because he couldn't do that. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense, actually, as you're saying this. So what is one of the biggest questions that you get from some of your clients about their marriages when it comes to the different languages? What's one of the biggest questions, would you say?
Gosh, that's a good question. Probably helping women recognize by the time, well, I shouldn't say all my clients, often ladies, and this is the mom conference, so they all understand, you're exhausted and your needs aren't being met. And my whole course really is around, the whole reason to learn the language of men and what I teach women is to help ladies get their needs met because you're exhausted.
Right.
And you start carrying around this intensity. I call it the intense woman, because now it's been long enough. You've asked for certain things and he hasn't followed through with it, or he was good for a little bit and then he's reverted back. And so your feelings just keep keeping her over and over again, to where then resentment starts to build, and resentment kills love, period. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things, like, where's my happy self? Why am I not like I was before? We'll never be the same. After we have children, I mean, we're so busy and life changes, but it can get more beautiful, and it should get more beautiful. It's going to be perfectly chaotic. But I think that's the biggest thing, is helping women with that giving and adapting part of them, to where they don't give and adapt themselves away so much that their needs are never met and they're not having the joy and happiness they should be feeling for dedicating their life to another. Right.
What is that balance between, because when you talk about the different languages, obviously there has to be some give and take. You're going to have to be a little more patient, a little more compromising than maybe you were before once you understand this. So what's the balance between compromise and also getting your needs met, what you want?
Well, it's being able to communicate to him in his language, understanding how he works, how he thinks, just like that. Like, now, if I need to talk to my man, I need to politely interrupt single task focus and not be frustrated that he can't do multiple things at a time, that he can't hear me plus help with dinner and listen to the kids in the background. So now, you do need to be a little bit more patient, and it's a learning curve. Like, you really have to be patient with yourself as you learn it. But you're going to be so thoroughly rewarded by doing it. And so really the balance is probably more being patient with yourself in learning the process. And then too, just learning that it's okay for you to have needs. Because a lot of times, I know in my situation, I had given and adapted so much that I didn't even know what my needs were. So often in my class, we dive into them even trying to discover what their needs are. Isn't that crazy? Because let me give you an example of needs. So men and women have total opposite relationships with needs. Men have an immediate and intense relationship with needs. Immediate and intense. If they are singly focused and all of a sudden hunger cuts through, bam, I am hungry, I am hungry, I am hungry. They no longer can focus here, they got to eat. You're sitting here, we're interviewing, it's like noon, you could have some hunger pains. What do we do as women when we're hungry?
Depends on what else we're doing, honestly.
Yeah, right. Everything else is going to come first.
Yes.
Right? We'll even feed the kids and forget to feed ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, when men need to go pee, what do? They go pee. When women need to go pee, we remember 2 hours later, I still have not peed. I mean, that's a pretty immediate need, but we just don't have a connection with our needs like men do. And so because of that, it often makes men look selfish. It will make them look selfish when truly they're not. They just have a stronger relationship with their needs. And when you understand these things, it's like you're able to get rid of all of these assumptions, these hurt feelings. So in answer to that question in a roundabout way, I think it's really helping women connect to their needs. And like you said, finding that balance of, well, how do you do that? And I think part of that balance too is teaching women you are responsible to get your needs met. Because we often expect our husbands to meet those needs for us.
Right.
And we're responsible to do it. It's not fair to put that pressure on them. It's not fair, like for them to guess, because the problem is we as women, if we're together, if say, I'm with my daughter and we're out and about, I have intuition with her. I can feel what her needs might be. We have that as women with our children, with our friends, with our moms, like we're around, we have that intuition. Men don't have that, but we assume they should. So like when we're kind of mopey and we're not, we think he should know what we need. Yeah, they have no idea. And they so want us to tell them. They hate the guessing game so bad. So
right.
And so we just keep getting our feelings hurt over and over and over again.
Right. So communicating is key, and doing it at the right time and in the right way in order to get your needs met. I love that. Yeah. What's the biggest impact that you've found that this knowledge has had on strengthening marriages?
Well, I know for my personal journey, the one word I used to describe it is I felt so free. Like it was so freeing when I started learning all of this. And so I've often heard ladies say the same thing, like this is just so freeing that number one, I'm not expected to handle everything for my husband, like figuring that all out. Like he's okay to be his own person and work in a different way. That's so important that we allow each other to be different individuals, and they don't have to do it our way. And so repeat your question again. I just answered my situation. I felt more freeing, but what have I seen in other women in their relationships?
Yeah, just how it's strengthened marriages once they figured all this out.
One of my favorite things to do is when, I've obviously got a lot of ladies in my community that have taken some of either my courses or they've seen me speak or whatever. When I run into their husbands, the smiles I get, thank you so much. And I often ask them and they're just like, the communication has just been incredible. And the respect for who a man is instead of feeling like he's constantly having to be changed or he's not good enough. And you just learn, kind of one of my mottos is love your man. As you love your man, you're going to be adored. And now you're going to create your story. So love your man, be adored, and create your story. And learning just, so marriage is a partnership. What's the first part of partnership? Well, we both have our own parts, but whose part do I have control over? Mine.
Your own. Yeah.
Only mine. And that, for a control freak, when I first realized that wasn't good news to me. I really wanted to be in control of all the little parts, but it wasn't working so well. I was trying and it wasn't working so well. And so, ladies taking responsibility for their own part and not being worried about his part. And then what happens, all these ladies will say the same thing, as I changed my part, as I worked on my part, it directly influenced him and he wanted to be better. So slowly he started, doing different things and asking me questions. And Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, we've all seen that when somebody's working on themselves, others around you are being benefited, right? They're the beneficiaries. And it makes, I mean, when you watch somebody else do a self-improvement, right, it increases your desire, right?
Definitely.
To be better. Yeah.
I love that so much. What would be your number one takeaway that you want moms to remember from everything that you've said?
So I would say the number one takeaway is there's more than one right way to do something. We need to remember that. And we need to remember that our marriage is the most important relationship in your life. Above your kids are going to leave. My kids are all gone. It's just him and I. It is the most important relationship you will ever have. And so we got to get rid of the queen's hat and realize there's more than one way to do something. And as we let that go, we need to be willing to understand that no one taught us. Did anybody teach you how to be married? No. Right?
But you get advice. You definitely get advice, but you definitely are not taught. You're just kind of thrown into it.
Exactly. I mean, what did it take for you to get your driver's license?
A course and a test and hours and hours of practice.
Yeah, right. And so we get none of that beforehand. And it's the blind leading the blind. And so because we fell in love naturally, because there's a lot of pheromones and a lot of things going on, you know, that attraction is very real. We fell in love naturally. We think marriage should just work naturally. And it doesn't. Every successful marriage has been very intentionally created, and it takes time. So I think that's the main thing is ladies, be willing to work on your marriage. And, you know, I worked on my marriage for many years, but it wasn't until, you know, gosh, we'd been married 20 plus years that I decided to just work on my part. Because how often, I always warn my ladies when they're reading relationship books, be careful, because if you're reading a relationship book that he should do this, she should do that, he should do this, she should do that, you know, you're going to come away going, my man isn't doing any of these things, and it's going to feel like things are even worse than they really are. Right. That's why I love, you know, I have, you know, different books now that I recommend that it's just talking about your part. Because then it's like, oh, okay, it's a real inward journey and you're worrying about yourself instead of thinking, oh, I've got to fix him.
And it's so much more freeing, it seems, when you don't have to worry about more than yourself and the things that you need to do.
Oh, and it is. And exactly right. And that's why, you know, in the beginning, when I learned I have no control over him, it was like, but I want that control. But then I realized, oh, wait a minute, but I have full control here. I mean, my happiness in my life is exponentially greater just by concentrating on my part, understanding his language, knowing what resonates with him, how he works. I don't take offense anymore. I mean, my feelings were just getting hurt time and time again. And life's too short to live like that. And I'm grateful. I'm just so grateful for the journey I've been on, because it's changed my life, and I've had the opportunity and the privilege of watching it change hundreds of women's lives. And it's just been the greatest blessing. I have the most awesome job in the whole world.
Oh, I love that so much. And you're obviously so knowledgeable. You have the best personality. And so thank you so much for doing this with us. Trina Glines, relationship trainer, coach, and speaker, and founder of the Taming Jane Academy. Thank you so much for being here with me today and taking the time.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rich Christensen, and through the years of entrepreneurship and growing crazy businesses, I lost a view of what was really important. Through a series of really tender experiences, my mentor taught me you can replace anything in this world, but you cannot replace your family. So I made a dramatic pivot and started embedding deeply in my family some of the same principles that applied to business. My wife and I began very deliberately parenting. We looked for models, how not to mess our children up. There were really no good models to teach values, to entrench family unity, and to make sure that the values passed on in legacy to my children, and more importantly, my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So like every great entrepreneur, I secretly created my own models. I was very hesitant to talk about it, but a few of my closest friends saw the impact that this was having on my children. I decided to take the processes that I used and create an online course so others could also work with their families to create tighter bonds, build confidence and self-esteem, while constructing a gorgeous legacy that they could live on past our lifetime. With this 5-part digital training series, you'll find the single most important lessons of thought leadership that I've ever created. There's 5 critical parts to this series, each with its very unique function. The first is symbols, creating unifying symbols that we all can touch to. Second is the doctrine, the guiding principles that we can tag and understand what the rules are. The third is the traditions or the rituals, where we actually formalize and we unite and show that we're unified with the values. The fourth, my favorite, the defining life events. The final section of this is the structure. What do the really wealthy families do to preserve their wealth and to pass on in the form of family banking? To pass on how you appropriately set up the will and how you embed your family constitution so that these values permeate and pass on. I can tell you firsthand that taking these steps to create a beautiful life for my family is the most important work that I've ever done and also the most rewarding. I would invite you to learn some of these principles, unify your family, bond them, and take some of the guesswork out of this. And I'm going to provide you the framework to make that happen with this 30 years of life experiences. So join me, get your membership to build family legacies today.